Welcome to Baseball Blueprint, your home for all things player development.
Welcome, everybody, to the Baseball Blueprint podcast, your home for all things player development, where we highlight some of the best instructors in the game. Today, we're pleased to have Coach Donnie Murphy, minor league infield coordinator with the Blue Jays. Donnie, this is awesome, man. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on.
This will be good. So we don't get a ton of coordinators. We have a couple different minor league coaches come on. So for those listeners who are unaware, can you give a little bit of perspective into maybe some of the role differentiation between, let's say a developmental coach versus a coordinator?
Yeah, developmental coach. You're more hands-on with players, face to face. You're in the grind every day with those guys. You're with them during the season. As a coordinator, I go around to all the affiliates. I'm kind of there to help the coaches out, make sure they're kind of locked and loaded with the players, make sure they have everything they need. I'm kind of a soundboard for them. I'm help if they need it. So when I do go into town, I'm more just kind of watch. Hey, what do you need from me? And just kind of let them do their thing with the guys on a daily basis. So I'm more behind the scenes in this role, but just making sure I'm pushing the program and what we're looking for, and just trying to get these guys better, get them to the big leagues.
I dig it, man. I dig it. So for those who are getting introduced to you for the first time, can you give a little bit of your background and kind of how you found your way into this role?
Yeah, I mean, played for 13 years, and so as soon as I was done, jumped into coaching with the Blue Jays back in 2016. Was the hitting coach for 4 years. Did that. I loved it. Loved grinding with the guys. I mean, I was lucky enough to work with like Bo Bichette and Vlad. They were in their first full seasons. Kind of see how they were doing. And then I was like, I want to try this manager thing. So I did that for 3. It was supposed to be 4, but COVID year messed up my first year as a manager. And then transitioned into the bench coach for AAA last year, Buffalo. So I was mainly doing infield there, third base coach. Infield's always been my passion, and lucky enough to get the opportunity to take over the infield coordinator role this year. And that's kind of been my journey so far as a coach.
Awesome, man. So working your way in as a coach for the first time, and that first introductory role, I believe was you were hitting only. Was that the role?
Yeah, hitting and a little bit of infield too. Yeah,
I dig it. So what was that contrast like between coming from having this really long career as a player, now you're taking a different kind of view into the game?
Yeah, it was definitely a transition. Sometimes as a player, you don't realize how much coaches do behind the scenes. And so like I was kind of jaded a little bit in how I thought about what coaching was like. I thought you're just going to get there, just work with the players, but there was so much more to it. You realize how much time and preparation it takes every day to get ready to play that game and help players out. So it definitely was an adjustment period. It was one of those things where like, hey, go get after it. It wasn't really like, hey, this is how we do things. It's like, go get your feet wet, figure this out. And, as the year went on, get more comfortable. But that first year was definitely a change for sure. I don't know if I was really ready for it at first, but it was a lot of fun though.
That's awesome, man. And as you made that transition into manager, I could only imagine that kind of like, okay, so now I'm working and finding my voice as a coach, and now I'm essentially coordinating these other coaches and delegating. Was that an interesting transition for you, or is that pretty natural?
I think manager. It's like always like I think when I went in the manager role, I think it was kind of I always had I kind of had that leadership skill. I think always, and I always wanted to be involved in a lot of different things. When I was hitting coach, it was like, hey, you're hitting and you do some infield. You didn't really get to see the other side. You didn't really feel like you're, helping too many people out as much, except for your like 12, 13 hitters. But getting the manager role, you had all 25, 26 guys that you're helping, building relationships with, completely different side of the game. And it was cool. There's a lot more that comes with it. You get more phone calls than you're used to from the front office, having those conversations you're not used to. So it was really time consuming, especially when you have a family. So trying to delegate your time and have some personal time alone, it was a little bit challenging, especially at the A-ball level, because a lot of those kids are in first full seasons for the first time. And so there's just a lot of helping guys mature, getting their routine. So it was a lot of times where it wasn't even baseball. And so they could be a little bit challenging. But I feel like that role set me up for, being ready for this role. It helped me see it from a different lens. I've already dealt with front office. I've kind of already helped other coaches. And so I think it definitely prepared me, and I'm glad I did it because, I don't think I'd be as prepared now if I didn't manage.
Yeah, I dig it, man. I dig it. So looking more towards now, just specific instructional pieces, As you started progressing throughout your career as a coach, have there been some instructional notes that you've altered or changed, or maybe don't even teach anymore?
I remember in the beginning, I always thought like, hey, I played in the big leagues before. That's all I care about. I'm gonna, it's what I know, and I realized real quick that it's not even about that. It's about building relationships and showing that you're there for them. I think just and I kind of took a step back and just go, hey, like my favorite coaches, like what was their characteristics? And the thing that always popped up with me is like they made me feel like they cared about me. They always felt like they were there for me and not themselves. And so really taking a step back and looking through that lens, kind of just, my knowledge is what it is. And, I've been lucky enough to play the game for so long, and it's going to be helpful, but it's at the same time as those relationships that you build and showing you they care. It's just building that trust with the player and getting after it every day with them and just seeing them get better. And it's been amazing, and so it's just like that style has really crept in over the years and comfort, and I wouldn't change it for anything. It's been amazing so far.
That's interesting. And you talk about kind of being involved with the first full season with guys like Vlad and Bo. What kind of progression have you seen from them as people, working from, being so young and then working into where they're at now and just killing it?
It's like when I had Vlad, he was just transitioning to third base for the very first time. He was more of an outfielder as a young kid. So they want to try third, and he was very raw. Stick was there. That was easy. Just don't mess him up. But like, it's just like Vlad, it was just like, teach him footwork, getting him to, he's doing things that he never did before, and just trying to get him comfortable there, especially third base. Your transition to third base is not easy. So just trying to get his footwork down, try to get his base, glove positions and all that. It took a while. It's still a work in progress, but from where he is, from where I had him to now, it's night and day. You would have never thought he played outfield now, so he looks a lot more comfortable. Bo was very, very young, very, very more hitting, that was his focus. I think like in high school, it was like, hey, Bo, you rake. You're going to play. We're going to play a shortstop. You're good. Just catch the ball and throw it. So there's a lot of things that we had to really hammer down with his routines and kind of just get him some more rhythm. And like I said, it was like it was just watching them. It was fun working with them every day. One hit 380, one hit 330. So it was like, it was easy. It's just like, when are they going to get out of here? So they were night and day above everybody in that league, but it was fun to watch them.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You've been in a couple different roles now, and you've got some different perspectives on things. And one of the more frustrating pieces of being a lower level developmental coach, especially for guys starting out, is you don't have control of who gets promoted or who gets sent where.
Yeah.
As a coach, being in that position now that you have a little bit more perspective of having that coordinator role and seeing the bigger picture per se.
Yeah.
How do you work through that as a younger coach, or what advice would you have to coaches who are dealing with that?
Every organization, you always have you have your top picks, and then you have your non-drafted guys, and the reality of this world is that some guys get $3 million and some get 1,000. It's just it's tough. But as a young coach, you got to put everybody on the same even field. Everybody's important. And you put as much time as you do in that first rounder as you do the guy that got drafted last. And I think just going out there and being comfortable coaching the higher picks, because that could always be the one thing where you're scared because you don't want to like change things at times. And when you watch them, you're like, there is some change that needs to happen, but you let them go out there and grind. You let them struggle a little bit, and at the end of the day, don't jump in there. The last thing you want to do is go put your stamp on someone when it's not necessary. You're hoping that relationship and that trust organically creates that relationship where they do come to you more. And you can help them out. But I wouldn't just go out there and jump ahead and go, hey, I need to help this guy out when it's not necessary. They're not going to believe in you. They're not going to buy into what you're trying to help them with if there's no trust there in relationship first. So relationship building is the number one thing with the new coach, I believe.
I dig it, man. I dig it. So veering off here into almost more of an operations side of things, when you're looking at let's say advanced defensive analytics, we're taking like OAA, FRV, something like that. How much of that kind of data are we able to have for like younger players? Are we able to project scores like that for guys at like low A, high A?
Yeah, the beautiful thing is like our low A team plays at our major league spring training site. So they have Hawkeye and they have all this data that's going to measure, play difficulties It actually measures everything, like how far you went, your angles, so it really, you don't miss too much at those levels, and so it is really really precise. So I mean, if you would have said this about even 5 years ago, it would have probably been based off a coach writing down what he thought the play difficulty was, and if it was routine, easy or difficult. But the systems have come so far in stadiums like that now that you get a true reading on a true value of an infielder now. And so the great thing about that, those things that we get now, we even have our own defensive, profiles and all that too, that, shows us where they struggle, shows us if they struggle their backhand, it shows us if they struggle coming in on balls. And so all that analytical data combined, it allows us to coach at another level now. We're not guessing anymore. Our eyes have always, been the tool for us, and it still is the true tale of what we see as a coach. But we have data now that supports what we see now, and those are the conversations that allow us to go to a player and go, hey, I was noticing this, and look at this now. What do you think? How do we attack this? What are your thoughts on this? And kind of lay out this plan for them to get better and to get confident. So they, when it comes to OAA and DSR and all that stuff, like now we're gonna focus on trying to get better, and get you more confident making those plays.
Awesome. That's awesome. So I would make the assumption that a lot of your Latin players coming over from the DSL are probably a little bit more foreign to advanced analytics or even some of the play tracking things, for having had some experience with guys at other levels and find out what they're doing. Yeah. Is that jump where I guess there's a little bit more clarity behind what's actually the product on the field? Is that jump ever something where the information is maybe not given so freely to a player? That way we don't like kill confidence, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, at the young kids, especially like DSL and FCO, we tend to, one, there's not as much data because they just don't have, it's not the sample size of like hitters and them. It's very small. So we try to keep them away from them. We're just trying to get those kids better, honestly, teaching them the fundamentals, get them to catch the ball routinely every time, just making sure they're doing the basics really well. As they progress and they understand a little bit more, especially understanding the game a little bit more, now we can dive into some stuff, introduce them to, positioning, certain data. I don't want to overwhelm these kids. It's already hard as it is. You normally hey, you can normally tell when a kid's ready or not. We have makeup profiles to tell us how these kids learn, how much info, how we can approach them with certain things. And so taking all that stuff into consideration, it's easier to understand and when we should show those things now. But yeah, in the basics, it's like, hey, let's just get the right footwork. Let's get the right glove work. Let's make sure that we know where we need to be. All the basic stuff you can think just to make them, confident on the field.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let's gear this more towards coaches now. As someone who came straight from playing to coaching and making that transition, we talked about how that kind of went for you. Do you have any advice you would give to some younger coaches who are maybe making that transition for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, it's just I feel like you just like the way the game is now. I think you need to start understanding a little bit more, like the data piece, like we were just talking about. Like, it used to be like, hey, 10 years ago, like even when I was getting in, it's like, do you know baseball? It was like, hey, have you played? Do you know the game? Can you throw batting practice? Like that was like the things that we used to go to. Now it's just like, hey, do you understand like these metrics? Do you understand this data? How can you help a player? How can you teach with this? How can you be creative in practices based off this to help these guys improve? And so it's just really dive into the analytical side and understand what it means. It's not the end all be all. You can't just coach off it. You have to have a balance. So learn the game, have conversations, but understand that stuff at the same time, because eventually it's gonna come to fruition with you where you're gonna have to understand this stuff and actually like teach off it and coach guys. So I think for me, it's just finding a happy balance that's gonna help you be a really good coach for yourself and the players.
I dig it. So as you've made these jumps, and let's dive into your time during your AAA stint as a coach here. What are some of the more common teaching points you were having to address at that level?
It's just, I mean, we're in AAA now. It's just like, how can we put you in a position where the big league team's going to trust you? Are you going to catch the ball? Do you know where to go with it? When game situations arise, you're going to make the right decision. It's just, sharpening the edges more than anything. Even though the game is a little bit different now, when in terms of like when you got rid of the short season a couple years ago, that really stunted development and really rushed guys to kind of levels that they weren't ready for, and so that pushed everybody up a little bit. And so, like I would say, like sometimes AAA is like a guy that's there should be in AA. So we're really trying to fine tune, making sure the fundamentals are all there. Like if and honestly, the way the game is now, you have to play all these different positions,
Yeah.
and so it's just getting them comfortable playing three positions. It used to be like, hey, now you're a shortstop, go hammer out shortstop and be really good at it. Now it's like, all right, now I got to balance three different positions. How am I going to do that? How am I going to be able to do that and focus at the plate every night and perform to allow myself to be a big leaguer? It's really, I commend these kids now. It can't be easy at all. Just playing shortstop, third, second on consecutive nights. It's got to be really hard. So it's just trying to find routines for these kids now that's going to allow them to be ready for those spots, and because they're all different, and
Yeah.
so hopefully we're preparing them the right way and giving them the right type of balance they can and get the right amount of work for that so they can be ready.
I dig it, man. Okay, so let's drive back into when you were a player here. Can you give us a couple examples of where they're like highlight reel moments for you, where you were like, that's a great memory?
Oh man. Obviously, first home run I ever had. It was like I think it was my first call up after the next season after my first call up, and I got a home run off CC Sabathia. So now he's a Hall of Famer now. So like I'll always remember that one. But I just remember, honestly, I don't running around the bases, and I don't remember ever touching the ground. And I was so beyond scared and nervous. And I was called up the year before, but it was such a surreal moment to like actually hit your first home run in the big leagues. And that was sweet. I think the next one was I had 2 walk-offs with the Marlins in the same week, which was, I mean, like I don't even know if I had one before that in the minors, and I had 2 in the big leagues in like 6 days, and so one was another off of another closer that's a Hall of Famer now, Billy Wagner, and then the opposite field home run off Houston Street. So like those are like my core ones that remember, because it was just great times in my life and had a blast doing it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So for you, and I'm not super familiar with your route to the minors, but did you have a certain level where you found it was more challenging?
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky enough. Like I performed like coming up, and I had a really good low A first full season. Maybe I'd say high was a little bit challenging, but I was dealing with some knee stuff that year. So then my challenging, I think I hit like 265 that year. So it wasn't awful. And then like the next year, I think I hit like 300 in AA, and then I got called up. And so I ended up skipping AA. I mean, I skipped AAA with the Royals. I never played AAA with the Royals. So just that jump, it's almost like it's cool to get called up from AA, and God, being in the big leagues, you wouldn't change it for anything. But like at the same time, it's like, man, was I really ready? I wish I would have had a little bit of time up in AAA to, make some adjustments and learn how to fail before I got to big leagues. Because like getting your butt kicked in the big leagues and never really going through that before, it's challenging because you really don't know where to fall back to when that happens. And so I struggled hard. Like the big leagues was like my first struggle spot where like I didn't know where to go from there. And you can't like just go up to the coach or at least you don't feel like you can go up to a coach and go, hey man, like I'm lost. Because you feel like, hey, this kid's, he's weak. We need to send him down. He needs to work on stuff. And I never wanted to do that. So like I sucked it up and went out there and tried to grind and figure it out. But it was tough. And I feel like if I went to AAA for a little bit, I might have had a better understanding of like maybe what that struggle was like and how to get out of it.
Wow. Okay. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So let's do this. Out of the coaches you've had a chance to play for, learn from, can you give us some names of some guys who you just thought were really, really good dudes and knew their stuff?
Oh man. I got lucky enough to play for Perry Hill. Man, that dude's a stud. Like and it's not even difficult stuff. Like he just makes you like it's so simple of a system that it makes you confident. Like it made me feel fundamentally confident where I can go, just hit me the ball. I'm gonna catch it. Like I'm not worried about anything. And then I followed that up with Ron Washington, like a couple years after, and they're two totally different coaching philosophies. Like when it comes to fielding and how they do things, but like they both have really great stuff, right? And so like those are the two that really stick out in my mind. Like especially on the defensive side, um, hitting. I mean, it was James Rowson. I mess his name up all the time, but like he just let me be me. And the best thing about him was he went up to me and goes, "What do you want me to look for?" I said, "Hey, when I'm in a funk, this is what I do." And I said, "Just pay attention to this." And that's all he did. And when he saw it, he just reminded me. And like he kept me locked in that year in Chicago. And it was the best year I had in the big leagues. And so like he didn't change me. It was beautiful. Like he made sure that I was just the best version of myself every day and just reminded me. Let's see. Manager wise, man, I had some good managers. I mean, I played for Ozzie Guillen. He was kind of crazy, but like he was like crazy in a good way where he would never let you get comfortable and he would always push you and he would have your back. I didn't understand him at first. I thought this guy was just a lunatic. He was always yelling, but like he has a good heart. He pushes you. He means it the right way, but it's just like his personality, I think, just kind of gets lost in the media at times. And but players love playing for him, and he always has their back no matter what. So yeah.
Awesome, man. That's awesome. That's a pretty good group of guys that you've had a chance to learn from. That's
Yeah.
pretty elite, and especially someone who's working with infielders right now. I mean, you got two of the biggest
Yeah.
names in that space there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we'll close with this here, Donnie. Let's go back. If you could give yourself three pieces of advice as a first year coach, three words of guidance. Now that you've came as far as you have, what would they be?
I mean, the first one is patience. Like it's just like I just be patient. It's not always going to be flowers, roses. There's going to be a lot of struggles, and just have patience with guys. Be open minded. I feel like that helped me out. Like that helped me grow as a coach. Thought I knew everything in the beginning. Realized I didn't. Was closed off a little bit. Now I'm open minded. It's made me a much better person and coach. And just be a learner. Just pick people's brains, dive into stuff, get smart. Learn a lot of the stuff that's happening in this game now, and really refine your skill set as a into the data and in this game in general, because it might vary in how this game goes, and like we might see more of it and less of it, but like it's always going to be around, and just figure out how to use it.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, Donnie, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. Hey, special shout out to the Baseball Bluebook Network for partnering with the show. Thank you to Valley Sporting Goods for being a sponsor, Heater Sports as well. You'll have discount codes for that on my bio, so check those out. And make sure you download the Baseball Bluebook app. It's free. You'll have access to coaches, trainers, events in your area that you can get some exposure as a player. And if you're an instructor, you can add your times and availabilities on that as well. So, Donnie, this has been a pleasure. I know you guys have a busy time of the year right now. I really appreciate it, man. This was awesome.
No, I appreciate you having me on.
All right, guys, we will catch you next episode.